Hello. I wanted to talk a little bit about this recent Nick Cave record, Wild God. Um, and I don't really know what I'm gonna say about it. I mean, beside the fact that it really moved me a lot emotionally. I think it's an incredibly powerful record. I think it's maybe the most hear record of the year so far. Certainly my pick for best record released so far this year. And I wanted to talk about why, not just the music here, but like the extenuating circumstances, kind of. We'll say before all that, yeah, I pre-ordered this like back when it was announced from Rough Trade, um, because I was pretty positive I was gonna love this record, and it turned out I was correct. The insert, see, nice photo of Cave there, and lyrics on the back. Whatever this material is, it's kind of, for lack of a better word, it's kind of sticky. It's like kind of tacky. So getting the vinyl back into the sleeve requires a bit of labor. It takes me a while. That's okay. I mean, it's worth it. That's good fidelity, I guess, whatever that word means. And yeah, this is why I pre-ordered it. Apart from knowing I would love it, is it comes on this cool clear vinyl, and I'm like a sucker for colored vinyl. Even though this is like the no, this is clear. So yeah, I mean, this is like absence of color vinyl. I mean, I think black is the absence of all color, so regular vinyl is absence of color vinyl, but clear is also. I mean, white is every color, so that wouldn't be an absence of color. That would be like a confluence of color. But this, yeah, color color is absent from this particular vinyl. Anyway, I don't know, if you're a fan of Nick Cave or not, or if you've been following anything that's been going on with him. I mean, early Nick Cave stuff, it's very good. He's always been a great lyricist, but it's very confrontational at first. And he said this, that like early in his career, he wanted to get up in people's faces and freak them out, and then as the years went on, he mellowed a bit. And for me, things started to get really good, around Tender Prey in like '88, and then going into The Good Son and Henry's Dream and Let Love In, Murder Ballads, Boatman's Call. All those records are wonderful. He reaches kind of an apex of greatness on this double album, Abattoir Blues, Lyre of Orpheus, which is just like astoundingly good. All that being said, I think that the recent phase of his career has been something very different and something very powerful. And it's my favorite stuff he's ever done, starting with Push the Sky Away, which came out in like 2013. And that was before kind of the inciting incident for this like trilogy of albums that this record concludes, hopefully, for reasons we'll get into. But Push the Sky Away already had a lot of the sonic kind of trademarks of that trilogy. It was slower and very lyrical and very emotional, though it did have some of the great wild and crazy kind of old Nick Cave stuff like Jubilee Street and Higgs Boson Blues, and that stuff is awesome. I'm like the last person to complain about that stuff, but um in 2015, Nick Cave ended up losing his son, really tragically. His 15-year-old son fell off a cliff and passed away. And the the record he released after that, Skeleton Tree, is, I think, the most powerful, the most emotionally potent thing he ever put out. And like the opening lyrics on the record on Jesus Alone, you fell from the sky, crash landed in a field near the river Ader, was, a lot of this stuff, including those lines, was written before what happened to his son. And then he went back and amended some of the lyrics afterward. But the fact that there was this kind of, you see this a lot with art. I mean, it happened with Warren Zevon too, where he wrote this concept album about his own death, Life Will Kill You, before he knew officially that he was sick, with a terminal, disease. So it's funny how art can come kind of seem to predict those things somehow, those like incoming tragedies, and it just makes it hit even harder. But the thing with that record and the record that followed it, Ghosteen, the thing they have in common is that the first time I listened to them, I wasn't really a big fan. I was, well, on Skeleton Tree, there's a lot of it's not the most melodic record. It's a lot of, it's emotional bloodletting. It's like him releasing all of these emotions, and he's much less concerned with his voice sounding pristine. You really hear like his age on that record, um, and in a way that you never had before. For the first time, he kind of sounds like an old man on some of these songs, and you can hear maybe a little bit of for lack of a better term, kind of weakness in his voice, as if he's singing these songs without the usual level of preparation, whatnot. Um, and what became really clear, through returning to it a couple of times, is that it's an incredibly like honest and direct record. And to be honest, I don't know why I had reservations about it at first. It came out, in 2000 and 2016. So I don't know what my headspace was like then 8 years ago, but it only took a couple of listens for me to see how powerful a record it was, and how brave it was of Cave to put his stuff out there like that and be so honest about it. Because I mean, I've been a fan of Cave not just as a songwriter. I mean, I'm a huge fan of his as a songwriter, but just kind of everything he does. He's a multi-talented guy. He and his Warren Ellis, one of his main creative partners, they do a lot of soundtrack work together. I absolutely love his soundtrack work. And he's written novels and nonfiction kind of memoir pieces that are great. He's a wonderful writer in any medium, um, and he even has this blog called the Red Hand Files, where he'll respond to questions from his fans in this very very earnest and intelligent way. Just everything he does, he seems to do exceptionally well. Um, but he'd never released a record like that before. I mean, for all of the honesty in his past art, there is a certain persona, like this larger than life thing that he had going on that made his live shows so electric. So on Skeleton Tree, he completely let go of that and just allowed himself to be a normal guy who was going through a tragedy and was having trouble coming to terms with it. You know, understandably, very understandably. And then a few years after that record, you get Ghosteen in 2019, and once again, when I first listened to it, I was mildly disappointed for whatever reason. I guess I thought that all of the songs, there was a lot of sonic similarity between them. That they're all kind of sad piano songs that begin with a solo piano and then bring in additional instrumentation. That is the aesthetic of most of them. But once again, like the more you sit with this record, the more personal and just devastating and incredibly honest it feels. And it definitely has a narrative to it, like an unconventional narrative, but you know, nonetheless, there's a lot of thematic cohesion there, and yeah, it feels like um, the previous record, Skeleton Tree, was kind of about the event and the immediate aftermath, and Ghosteen is about, okay, now I've had some time to process this, right, and I'm not I'm not ready to be happy again yet, but there's like this melancholy kind of to it too, where he's allowing some joy and some beauty back into his life, while still living with this sadness. And Nick had actually spoken about, he said that as the years went by, I don't want to paraphrase him incorrectly, but he said that as, because he's experienced this depth of sadness over this event, that now, he has that context for now he can feel, joy like he never felt before, because you go to one extreme, then, I don't really know what I'm talking. I've never gone through something like what Nick went through, thankfully. And, you know, I know all of us, experience, a tragedy like that at some point. That's just the way life works. But, I think how how public Nick's been about it and talking about it. And I mean, he's done multiple albums about it. He's done a book that touched on it a lot, called Love, Grief, and Carnage, I believe it's called, that I'm like halfway through. It's kind of hard reading because it's, it's very emotional, but it's a great book. And there was also a film about it that his friend, Andrew Dominic did, um, which was about, making art in the wake of that event. Um, and he's talked about it a lot on Red Hand Files too with his fans. And I think it's so important, it's so brave of him to put that out there and speak honestly about it. And it's so um, beneficial to to see somebody going through this incredibly heavy thing and like processing it in real time and talking about, their thought, this, like, this is where I am at this point, this is where I am at this point, and just, it's heartbreaking, but it's fascinating, and it's could be very useful to somebody else who's going through a horrible thing like this, to have this art and to know what this other person's experience was. So I think that was an incredibly generous thing of him to do. And Ghosteen, what it ends with these couple of really long tracks, the title track and Hollywood, which are just kind of, because the earlier tracks on the album have been very mannered and very beautiful, and in this, those tracks are just kind of a brain dump where he just gets everything right out there. There's no pretense about, it's like, you don't have to be melodic and pretty and all of this, and it's like 25 minutes of music or something, and it's a couple of the most powerful songs Nick's ever written. Those songs are like crazy good, incredible. And then, so I mean, in the intervening years, he put out this Carnage record with Warren Ellis, which seemed less about, his own personal struggle, though that certainly was in there too, but just more about how fucked up the world was in general in February of 2021 when he put that record out. And now we have this, coming 5 years after Ghosteen, and this, it's almost like these three records are like one big concept album about Nick processing this event. And so you've got Skeleton Tree, which is the immediate reaction, just the grief. And then you have Ghosteen, where he's coming to terms with it and trying to reconcile it. and beginning to feel not just that sadness, but this kind of wider range of emotions kind of blending with that sadness. And then you have this, where there is certainly a lot of sadness on this record, a lot of grief on this record, but there's also a lot of joy. I mean, there's a track on here literally called Joy, and it's not ironic. It's a legitimately joyous song, and that's what's so powerful about this record, that it feels like kind of the happy ending to this very long, very devastating kind of journey that he's been on for these three records. And there's no resolution here. I mean, there's never resolution to an event like that. But it just feels really rewarding to have followed this story for so long, with Nick being so open about everything he was going through, and now you get to this record where where he's ready to to make something joyous again, something that feels like so full of life, and so ornate in its production, and all of these beautiful chorus vocals and all of this. And I mean, talking about highlights on here is really hard, because I think every song on here is gorgeous. I mean, Wild God, the first single, is absolutely incredible. Just the progression of it. The second half of that song is just overwhelming in just a really beautiful sort of way. And Frogs and Joy, Conversion kind of has a similar thing to Wild God, where it starts out beautiful, but it builds to this like crazy, grand, epic conclusion in this gorgeous way. Cinnamon Horses as well. And then oh wow, how wonderful she is, which is, it's a really nice love song. And it's interesting because this song is, it's going back into those themes of losing someone that's important to you, and processing it and finding you know joy in their memory. But it's not about his son Arthur. It's about a partner of his who was in the bad seeds with him at one point, Anita Lane, who passed away a few years ago, and him remembering her and celebrating her. And so it's all part of this larger thematic thing, where it's about moving on. It's almost like Nick's condensed like the 5 stages of grief down into these three records. And I would say, if you're a fan of Nick and you've been following him through all of this, and you've been feeling for him and empathizing with him, and wanting him to find some relief in this horrible period in his life, you know you 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 need to hear this record, because this really feels like what it's been building to, and as close to a beautiful happy ending as a situation like this can have. And I mean, even if you don't listen to Nick Cave and you have no idea who he is, you should still listen to this record, because it's beautiful and emotional. And I don't think you need context to enjoy this record. I mean, if you have the context, it's like devastating, but if you don't, it's just going to be a beautiful, powerful, kind of gospel tinged kind of rock record. And regardless, you should listen to it. It's the best album of the year so far, in my opinion, and it's going to take a real humdinger to beat it. I don't really think it's going to happen. So, all right, that's about it. Rambling, but incredible record. Check it out, and thanks for listening, and see you next time.